Well, hello again, guys, from here inside my dugout/greenhouse at Whitley Park. Yes, the temperatures have risen, but the wind, as you can see by the quiff just taking flight there, the wind, it is back. So for the purposes of sound quality, I've had to come inside here. Now, I've just been inside the building talking, yeah, we need to correct that, don't we? I've just been inside the building talking to Eddie Howe, and the big news to come out of today is that Harvey Barnes, he's going to be missing for the next month with a thigh injury. Now, Barnes came off at half-time during Sunday's FA Cup victory over Bromley, though one or two of you guys left messages below the line and tweeted me as well, asking the question, is Barnes actually injured, or was Eddie Howe trying to protect him, given that he didn't have a very good first half? Well, no, the indication was that there was always a genuine problem there. Barnes has since had his scan, and it's going to be well into February before we see him again. And that's really unfortunate. Listen, Harvey Barnes hasn't been in the team, and when he's come on, he's done okay. On Sunday, he started, didn't do particularly well, but he's a player I've always valued, and yes, he's found his place in terms of that super sub, and the numbers back that up in terms of the goals and assists. And while there is amongst supporters, yes, a little bit of frustration as to how that signing has played out, I still think he's got a massive value to the team and to the squad. And again, that's backed up by the numbers. And he was really unfortunate at the start of the season. Harvey Barnes had a brilliant pre-season. He was almost the Anthony Gordon of 12-month previous. He deserved to start the season in the team for me. On the back of that, the awful campaign he had last year with that injury just under his toe that they couldn't really diagnose exactly what he needed and how long he would be out for, really stop-start. You then had the good pre-season, and he didn't start against Southampton. And my information, I put this in my Newcastle Confidential column at the time, was that Barnes was really annoyed and really frustrated. And I understand that. And listen, Anthony Gordon came back in, and Gordon is a fantastic player, and he's in a place now whereby Eddie's decision, I think Eddie looked at it and thought, if you're going to get Anthony Gordon back to the level that he was last season, you've just got to play him and let him play his way into that form. And he has done. So I understand the logic, and given they've won 8 games on the spin now with Gordon absolutely central to that, you can't argue with the manager's decision. And it is a toss-up between Barnes and Gordon on the left there. We've seen neither really wants to play on the right. So as a result, Barnes has found himself out the team, even though I will caveat it with, I think he was unfortunate, and if he'd started the season in the team, it might have been entirely different. And what happens when you're not in the side and when you are coming on for 10, 15, 20 minutes here and there, and you then have to start the game? Well, muscles start popping and pinging, and we've seen now with Barnes, the thigh issue, he's going to be out for 4 weeks. What does that mean, though? Well, I said last week that Newcastle wouldn't enter into the January transfer market in terms of incomings unless there was an injury. Well, there's been an injury, but speaking to Eddie Howe inside there, he said that no, the plan hasn't changed. What we thought at the start of the month in terms of Newcastle being quiet with regards buying players, that remains the same. Now, the situation could change, and the one player, of course, is Alexander Isak. We've got a fitness update to come on him in just a moment. If he was to be out for a prolonged period, I think they'd have no other choice but to go and buy a replacement striker. But as of now, they're going to get by without Barnes, and given that it only is a 4-week injury back by mid-February, that's the hope. I wouldn't expect to see any movement at all on that, because as well, this talks to another point I've made and something we've just spoken about inside. Others are talking about this now. Newcastle are keeping their powder dry for the summer. Not necessarily the summer beyond June the 30th, while yes, we expect a lot of activity there, and if Newcastle are back in the Champions League and they've won cups, and all of a sudden, there is that scope and that potential to go and invest big and improve the starting 11, but it's that little soft PSR deadline before June the 30th when, like we saw with Newcastle last summer, they were in that position of peril. You can take advantage. And if Newcastle don't spend this January, there might just be a few bargain deals to be had when they can be the club who preys on the weakness of others. And I think that's what they're trying to do. That's the situation they want to be in this time round, 12-month on from the nightmare of last June. Now that leads us on to another point of discussion today as well. It was my questions to Eddie Howe with regards to Lewis Miley. Now, today is the day when clubs who have potentially breached PSR are going to be confirmed and announced by the Premier League. The information we have at the moment is that no clubs are going to be in breach of that. Eddie Howe confirmed to us inside there that he doesn't fear Newcastle being among that list, and that is because of the drastic action they did take back in June. And it was my question to Eddie. Lewis Miley on Sunday, I did my video about him afterwards. I really thought he was fantastic, and those questions we had, what sort of player would he return as after that period out with injury? Well, he's returned a better player for me. There was always that suspicion, even though an injury is never a good thing. No player wants to be injured, but there was that theory that Miley might just benefit. We saw his performance even before he picked up the problem, towards it was almost a year ago now, wasn't it, when he come into the team, done tremendously well. His performances had dipped off. We've got to be honest about that. But perhaps he just needed that break. He needed his body and mind to refresh and to grow. And certainly what we saw on Sunday wasn't the performance of an 18-year-old. That was a man in the six there who took responsibility. And the point I'm making is that Lewis Miley now all of a sudden becomes probably the most saleable asset from a PSR perspective. If Newcastle sold Lewis Miley or Alexander Isak, there's an argument to make in terms of the book price, given Miley's book price is zero. They might actually get more for Miley in terms of that profit. Not that we're contemplating that, not that the club are contemplating that, but I thought it was a timely junction just to bring it up with Eddie and say, what's your thoughts on this? And Eddie gave a really informative answer. He revisited first the Elliot Anderson sale and said that is the last thing we wanted to do, but they literally had no other choice. It was sell Elliot Anderson to Nottingham Forest or face a PSR points deduction that ironically probably would have been announced today. So that is why we spoke about it. That is why we revisited it with the manager. And he said, no, we've got to guard against that. You don't want to be selling academy products like Lewis Miley, players who you can build the team around for years to come. So that was an encouraging answer for you guys. I then went on to ask Eddie, what is Lewis Miley? Is he a 6? Is he an 8? Is he a 10? Eddie laughed and said, goodness, Craig, you're back on this midfield balance debate again. But again, he gave a good answer. He said, well, he's a little bit of everything. We saw on Saturday, Eddie said that he loved that performance, as we all did, sitting in the six, seeing a lot of the ball, doing a lot with it, being progressive, passing through the lines at pace, and then popping up with that wonderful goal as well. But also, last year when he came into the team, it was as an 8. He was getting up and down. He scored that goal. I forget, it was at home to Fulham, wasn't it? The brilliant goal at the Gallagher end. He was assisting as well, so he can play in the 8. There's also a theory amongst others who have watched him come through that he could be a 10, that he has that little quick touch to operate in those pockets, to slip that little pass through, as we saw with that ball for Willis Sula before his own goal. On Sunday, he's got that ability to unlock and to unpick defences. So at the moment, and this was what Eddie said, he doesn't want to pigeonhole him. There isn't a position for him, be it 6, 8 or 10. But I think in the short term, and this was the phrase I used when asking the question, I think he can be Sandro Tonali's body double for now in that number 6. He certainly showed that on Sunday. And Lewis Miley, wow, I just think they've got a player who will be a future international, and you do not want to be in a position again, PSR-wise, where a sale of a star like that actually becomes the only means out. The club have got to guard against that, and that's what Eddie said. Well, it is Wolves tomorrow night at St James's Park, where if Newcastle win, it will be a 9th straight victory in all competitions, and that would equal a club record previously set by Kevin Keegan in the mid-90s and Rafa Benitez in 2016. And for Eddie Howe to be spoken about in that company, well, it's well-deserved, and so he should be. The support I've always had of the manager. I firmly believe in him. The privileged position we are as journalists when you get to sit down with these guys once or twice a week. At the minute, it seems like every other day with Eddie Howe, we've got an audience with him. I've always believed in him. I think he's honest. I think he's genuine. I think he's intelligent. I think he's hardworking. I think he's got every quality you need to succeed, allied with what we see behind the trees there on the training pitch. For me, the best improver of players I've ever seen as manager at this football club. Everything is there, and he can match, he can emulate Keegan, he can emulate Benitez, and he can go one further. And that, of course, would be bringing that trophy back to Tyneside. And they're fighting on 2 fronts now. Carabao Cup semi-final to come, FA Cup as well. And as I said in my match report on Sunday, a few took this the wrong way, but the domestic treble is still alive. And while I'm not saying they're going to go and win that, isn't it interesting that for only the second time in the club's history, going into February, they're still going to be able to win the top division, the League Cup and the FA Cup? That speaks to the frustration and the run that this club has been on during the past 50, 60, 70 years. Eddie is brilliant, Eddie is the right manager, and they are now on the cusp of something brilliant, likewise this season as a collective. But they've got to keep it going now. The one word we spoke about inside there was that complacency. There's a real expectancy that Newcastle go and beat Wolves tomorrow, go and beat Bournemouth on Saturday, making a new club record of 10 out of 10 in all competitions. I expect them to do that. I also think they've got the right manager just to guard against that word we used repeatedly inside, that complacency creeping in. And they're going to have to, because we've seen games at home this season, West Ham and Brighton and others, when that onus is on Newcastle to go in and pick teams who sit deep and try to frustrate them. They've struggled at times. This is a different type of test again, but in recent weeks when they've come up against that they've found the answers. And I've spoken about this a lot, but that key, getting the ball forward quicker. Don't be faced with those 10 with that low block in front of him. When you've got a player like Sandro Tonali, when the opposition do come out, well, he can make that transition super quick with that pass through the lines. And that is what they're going to need again tomorrow night. Get the ball to the likes of Gordon and Isak in space and exploit that and get that early goal. The early goal makes all the difference, and Newcastle have been fantastic at that recently. So to that end, what will the team be tomorrow night? Well, Alexander Isak, guys, I wrote my Newcastle Confidential column last Thursday. He's okay. He avoided serious injury down at Arsenal. He's going to train for the first time today, but picking through what Eddie actually means, he said, we're hopeful, fingers crossed he'll be in the rounds. Yeah, guys, that means he is going to start. And no worries over Isak. Sven Botman, we expect to come back in as well. That was just a little bit of fatigue. I think he was always going to be rested against Bromley, given how brilliantly he'd done in the previous 2 games after 10 months out. Jacob Murphy will come back in on the right, and Joe Willock probably should be on the bench as well. So we'd expect to see a return to that 11 with Bruno Guimaraes coming back into the midfield that has done so well recently. And in terms of a prediction, well, I've done okay in the last few. Yeah, Bromley was easier than predicting 2-1 win down at Spurs the previous weekend, but I'm going to go for a 3-0 to Newcastle. I think if they just get that early goal. Yes, Wolves have got some good players. I love the player. Matheus Cunha, fantastic. You can actually see him in a Newcastle shirt potentially down the line. Wonderful player. But Newcastle have got better than that. They've got Isak, they've got Gordon, they've got Tonali, they've got Bruno, they've got Joe Linton, they've got Jacob Murphy as well. So go and beat them, go and show that they are the better team. And that is what I expect them to do. Well, that's it for now. I'll be back tomorrow night walking up and down the stands of the Milburn stand, reflection on what I'm pretty sure will be a home victory. And what a chance they've got now to enter that top 4. The next 3, Wolves, Bournemouth and Southampton after that. If Eddie Howe was watching this video, he'd say, don't get too carried away. It's one game at a time, but there's certainly that opportunity in front of them now. And given how well they are playing, wow, I just think they're so well set up to go and take it. So yeah, guys, it rolls on. It's exciting at the moment. It's newsy. On news, little update on Martin Dubravka. Well, there is no update really. We've spoken about him a lot in recent videos. Eddie Howe just said that discussions will continue, but the expectation now from my side of things, my information is that Dubravka will remain, and that is the right decision given how exciting this second half of the season could be. They wouldn't want to be undone by an injury to Nick Pope and then bring in a goalkeeper in Vlachodimos who perhaps they don't think is of that level of Martin Dubravka. So yeah, guys, again, that's it for now. I'll try again. Please comment below the line. Tell me, what do you think of Lewis Miley the other day? Would you, on the back of Harvey Barnes' injury, go out and buy a replacement winger? What would you do in January generally? Do they actually need to strengthen from a position of strength? This was a question I asked of Eddie Howe a couple of weeks ago. It doesn't look like they're going to. What are your thoughts? I appreciate all the feedback and all the interaction as ever. So yeah, guys, just as the wind picks up there, the quiff's going to collapse. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Take care. Bye-bye.